What is going on, race fans? My name is Jared Haas, and welcome to the best seat of the track this weekend. We're at this Talladega Superspeedway, and joining us this weekend is none other than our senior editor and writer, Daniel McFadin. Daniel, it is a pleasure to have on you with the show again. First time this year. You've been on the show quite a few times last year. I want to start with the big news that happened during this weekend with Kyle Busch. He kind of made the news of the statement of quote-unquote goodbye to Joe Gibbs Racing if there's no sponsorship too. It was pretty interesting that we've seen with that. And then we had reports of Joe Gibbs telling Bob Pockrass that he'll be fine, he'll be back in 2023 with sponsorship. My question is, speculatively, where does Kyle Busch go if he leaves Joe Gibbs Racing? He has a pretty good relationship with Toyota, and there's not a lot of Toyota teams that's in the Cup Series. It's either Joe Gibbs Racing or 2311. What are your thoughts on where is Kyle Busch going to go if he ends up as a free agent?
Well, I was asked this on Sirius XM radio yesterday, and I didn't have an answer at the time because I hadn't had time to look at a silly season depth chart in the time since Kyle Busch made his comments. Well, there's a 10 car at Stewart-Haas Racing with Eric Almirola since he's retiring after this year. So that's one. It'd be weird for Kyle Busch to go to 2311 Racing when it's just an extension or whatever of Joe Gibbs Racing. But that could happen. But we really don't know. Silly season hasn't really ramped up yet. So we really don't know what the lay of the land will look like come November. Again, this could just be Kyle Busch, being Kyle Busch, just being in a bad mood about something, and maybe it has to do with negotiations. Maybe Joe Gibbs is telling them I know Coy Gibbs said, last week at Bristol, they got some leads. But maybe he got some bad news about his prospects at some point this week. But it just could be him negotiating in public. So, but like you said, Joe Gibbs did say yesterday that he's confident they'll be able to keep Kyle. But it is April. It's a long year. So we'll see what happens come November at least.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that we have Ty Gibbs that's going to be coming up. It's more the if and when statement. And, Joe Gibbs Racing is pretty full, so there's a lot of speculation with that. Nothing to confirm. I think an interesting note if Kyle Busch leaves, I wouldn't be surprised if he, invests more in his truck or move his KBM Motorsports up to Xfinity. But you're right, there's not a lot of pieces to go in the silly season. Really, it's Eric Almirola's ride. That's the only one open. And you could see Ryan Preece take that over pretty easily if Kyle Busch is not available in the market.
Yep.
So we'll see. Seems like silly season happens earlier in the year. Well, Brad Keselowski's news that happened with RFK Racing basically broke around the Coca-Cola 600 weekend. So not too far off, but we'll see and wait what develops. Like I said, it could be just Kyle Busch thrown to a bone. But I want to focus to this weekend. Pretty interesting structure where we have the next-gen car, and this weekend at Talladega, there was no practice for the Cup or Xfinity series. There was for ARCA, but there wasn't for either of those two series. And I want to hear your thoughts on, these no practice weekends, especially with you being there. It's a little bit, we saw the Xfinity race, kind of a lackluster finish. Those drivers weren't be able to get those runs at the finish that was expected. Do you think these no practice weekends are beneficial to NASCAR and to the teams?
Well, all the drivers we talked to yesterday, pretty much all of them were either ambivalent or didn't care about practice. They didn't think it was useful, except maybe, just checking on the car, checking out your travels and stuff like that. The only person, really the only two that really said, I can go with practice were Todd Gilliland and Harrison Burton, rookies. And Todd Gilliland actually said he thinks practice at Talladega is fun. I've never heard anyone call practice fun, so I thought that was interesting. But really, I think everyone agrees we don't need to be holding 2 50-minute practice sessions at the Superspeedway outside of the Daytona 500. It's just there's not much to do, and you could potentially risk damaging your car. And especially right now, when there's a limit on how many cars teams have in their possession, why bother? So, would it give us something, to write about during the course of the weekend? Would it potentially add a couple of headlines? Maybe. But just in the grand scheme of things, there's a lack of return on investment when it comes to practice, at least in this form of racing in NASCAR.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that, we kind of had no practice in the past 2 years with the pandemic racing in 2020 and 2021. But it's interesting to note that this is the next-gen car. This is the first time that NASCAR is racing with the next-gen car. Do you see this more as the norm of no practice weekends? Or do you still see that we're having the structure of the 30-minute practices and qualifying more beneficial to NASCAR?
Well,
all right, welcome everybody.
That's loud. When I was driving into the track today, Trent Owens, who's the crew chief on Justin Haley's car, was on the channel, and he said these cars are basically built to only have these short shakedown practices and then go straight into qualify. I think he might have elaborated on that, but I don't remember. But the way, so basically the cars aren't built for long-term practices. So I think we're gonna continue to see these short practices, but we're not gonna not at super speedways. You're not gonna see it here, except Daytona. How loud is that?
Good old PA system at the track. Lovely to interrupt us too, but Daniel, it is time for our picks, and I will talk over this to get over through our standings. Last weekend, we had Brian Davis-Keith on the show. He picked Joey Logano to win, and I had Chase Elliott. Both drivers finished in the top 10, but Logano finished third, while Chase Elliott finished eighth, so Brian Davis-Keith got the point, while I still have my points lead. So, Daniel, I'm going to give you the pick, like I said, for you to go first. Who's going to survive at Talladega and claim the checkered flag? And you might as well draw it out at hat.
People want to say that, but it usually does come down to drivers who are good at the style of racing. I'm going with Ryan Blaney, who's won here twice, and who was very, very close to winning the 500 in February. He's an exceptional super speedway racer, so I'm going with Ryan Blaney.
There's a lot of good picks that I have going for. The Toyotas look a lot stronger in qualifying that they did, and that's the only on-track action that we had for the Cup Series. I'm still going to stick with that Ford Brigade go, and I'm going to stick with Penske Racing, and I'm going to go with Joey Logano. He flipped last year, but I'm hopeful that he'll do well, work with his Penske teammates, survive those crashes, and then get into victory lane. Daniel, it was great to have you on here. Like I said, have a great race weekend. And from everyone here at Frontstretch.com, make sure to subscribe and have a great race weekend.